Hi, I'm Larry Puckett, the DCC guy. Today we're going to take a look at this bridge here. It's a lift-out bridge in the doorway on my Piedmont Southern layout. And this was the subject of a chapter in my book, Wiring Projects for Your Model Railroad, published by Kalmbach Publications in 2018. So there's an entire chapter on how I went about building this originally. But there's some things that I'm not exactly happy with about this installation. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we go on, I want to ask you to take a moment to hit that little red subscribe button, and when the little bell comes up, click on it and click all. Now, one thing I want to point out, this is something of a milestone day because this marks the 300th video that I've posted here on my YouTube channel. So the next time you're looking for something to watch, there are 300 videos on here. All you have to do is go to the DCC Guy YouTube channel homepage, and you can scroll down through the entire list of all 300 of those videos. Also point out that right now we're closing in on 35,000 subscribers. It was only 3 years ago that I was starting to approach 1,000 subscribers. So we've come a long way in the last 3 years. Now, something that I want to point out having to do with lift-out bridges like this one here. If you're not really careful, you can end up with a ding on your forehead or the top of your head or anywhere else if you're not careful dealing with these things, because they do get in the way when you're trying to go in and out of a door or duck under at various other places. And it's very easy to get distracted and run into the darn things. And that's why I put this barricade stripe on the sides of the bridge itself. And that came in the form of a roll of tape that I picked up off of Amazon. It was fairly inexpensive and made it real easy to add this barricade stripe. Hopefully it will get people's attention, but it didn't stop me from banging into it, so you got to watch out. I think one thing I might try is adding some of those red flashing LEDs here on the bridge itself and powering them off of track power. Well, before we dig into actually doing some work here on the bridge, I want to share with you some diagrams from the guys at DCC Concepts and how they go about using what are called their PowerPoints. And these are just like the alignment dowels that I used on the modules a couple of years ago for aligning them, except that these have a very unique design. They have electrical contacts built in as well. So you can install these for alignment and power transmission. So you don't have to run wires between your modules. Well, you can also use this on a bridge like this, because if you install these properly, and I'll show you that diagram in a minute, then these alignment dowel points can be used to give you proper alignment of your bridge so it's stable and it's going to stay in position all the time. And they also have, like I said, electrical transmission built in. So you can set this up so that every time you install the bridge and get proper alignment, you also get power transmission. So no connections to be made. And that's one of the things that I wanted to change about the way I built this originally, because I was never satisfied completely with the alignment method I used or with the connections I had to use in order to power the tracks themselves. So what I want to do is bring you in here, take a closer look at what I originally did in this installation, and give you some ideas on how I'm going to change it. And we'll also take a look at the DCC Concepts method for installing the PowerPoints and how those work. While I was in England, I visited the DCC Concepts office and showroom in Settle, and as soon as I walked in, I saw something that got my attention, and it was this right here. Now they have a large layout about chest height that goes all the way around the room, and right here at this doorway, and you can see the door frame on the right there, they had this bridge connecting the two sides or the two halves of the model railroad. And you can see those alignment pins right here. These are special alignment pins or dowels that they call their PowerPoints. And you can see they line up with these guys down here. Now this is a diagram of that lift-out bridge that I just showed you photos of. So this is the bridge. It's hinged so it can flip over. In my case, I can't do that because my ceiling's too low. But what they've done is they've used these PowerPoints here. So you've got track power going to the feeding through to the bridge itself. And then they've got it connected back to the preceding track, where they've cut a gap. So you can see they've cut a gap in one rail. And by doing that, with this type of connection, when you lift the bridge, it cuts power to this section of track. And as a result, any train that's coming this way, when it hits this section of track that is dead now, it's going to stop before it gets to the opening. Now, I originally, when I did the wiring for my lift-out bridge, I used this approach. And so my wiring is already there. The cuts and gaps are already there. So I just need to install these PowerPoints. They also put the PowerPoints here on the other side and cut another isolation gap here so that they would have the same thing happening over here. So you're protecting the gap so that trains are not going to come along, run to the end of the track and fall into the gap or run into the bridge and derail. And that's the kind of thing that I have on my layout now, but by adding these PowerPoints, it's going to make those connections so much easier because I'm not going to have to worry about disconnecting the wiring as it is now. And I'll show you that. Okay, so this is a close-up of those dowels. So they look identical to the blue ones that I used previously for the alignment dowels on the modules. And in this case, they're a blackish color with these gold connectors here. And if you look right here in the inside, there's a little gold pin there, and there's a gold pin right here. Now, when these dowels come together, they give you perfect alignment, plus they make electrical contact right here. And then you can just attach your wires on your module or on your layout to the ends of these, and it will give you an electrical connection. So you can use 2 of these for your DCC power bus and hook up 2 modules together. Never have to worry about using any other kind of electrical connectors. And let me show you how I'm going to use these on my bridge here at the Piedmont Southern. So you can see right here, I have used what's called an Anderson power pole setup. And these are a very low resistance type of connection. So you get good contact, you get very low voltage drop across it. They're great for use with connecting modules together and situations like this. However, it's a pain in the neck to have to make these connections each and every time that I want to take this lift-out bridge out. So I would like to dispense with those and come up with a better approach for making the electrical connection to the bridge. Now I'm also going to show you now what's involved with getting this thing out. So I have to reach under here and pull this apart. And then I have a slider latch right here that holds it in place. So I'm going to pull that back on both sides, and then it just lifts right out. And that's my bridge. So it's a very nice bridge design, I think. I like the way the bridge turned out, but I'm not so happy with the way that the electrical connections have to be done here, and also with the way that I aligned it. So let me bring you in and we'll take a look at the alignment system. Now this here is how I go about aligning the bridge itself. These 2 bolts here on each side screw in and out, and they allow me to center the bridge here in this opening so that I'm aligned perfectly with my rails left and right. Now to get it up to the correct height, I've used these 2 leveling screws here, and these are what I use typically to place on the bottom of the legs on the layout, and they are leveling screws. So I can bring these up, I can bring these down, and that allows me to raise and lower the bridge itself so that it is perfectly aligned with the height of the rails. So it seemed like a really good idea at the time, and this I got from a fellow named Lance Minheim, who builds model railroads as a profession. And you know, I liked it back then. However, using it, I've found that these tend to move, both the bolt heads as well as these leveling screws. They tend to move up and down as you take things in and out. You know, you just inadvertently hit them, and you've got to make adjustments again. So what I'm planning on doing is installing these alignment dowels, and so they will be placed into the support here for the bridge in place of these guys here, and they will provide both the alignment and electrical connection between the wiring at the on the layout and the bridge itself, so that every time I take the bridge out or reinstall it, I will get electrical connections made. I won't have to use those Anderson power pole connectors, and I will be able to align the bridge perfectly with the tracks here. So all I have to do is get this guy set to the correct height and then install these guys in place of the levelers, and I'm going to go about rebuilding this mounting system. Okay, so I've managed to get this out. I had 2 screws here and I had 2 screws on the back holding it in place. So at this point now I'm going to finish. I've got to pop this guy off, these 2 out, and the bridge itself needs to be raised a bit. So I've got to raise this up to the point that the bridge will rest directly on the PowerPoints and be at the correct height. So after making some measurements and doing some thinking about this, I think the easiest approach will be to take a piece of 1/2-inch plywood and cut it so that it forms a riser here. So it's going to raise it up a 1/2 inch, which is exactly what I needed. And it's going to give me a good flat, stable location to install the PowerPoints. Okay, so I got out my chop saw and I cut some pieces of plywood. So as you can see, that's going to elevate the bridge about 1/2 inch. I'm going to go ahead and get out the glue and do some gluing and get this ready. Okay, the next thing that I need to do is pull up these re-railers at each end of the bridge, because I have to be able to get underneath here in order to install the PowerPoints, because the electrical connection has come up through the bridge and I have to make it through there. Fortunately, these are soldered on right here on each side, so all I have to do is heat these up and I'll be able to pull these right off. If you slide a putty knife between the bottom of these ties and the top of that cork, it'll go ahead and it will come loose, so it's not that big of an issue. Okay, I'm going to be working from this side of the doorway now because it will allow you to see what I'm doing on camera here. So what I need to do, I've glued the riser in place. Everything is at the perfect height. I've got everything, the bridge is clamped in using my clamps here, so it's not going to be moving while I'm drilling. So I need to drill this pilot hole. And for that I've got my Black & Decker 12-volt battery-powered drill. And the nice thing about it, it's got this little LED that indicates whether or not you're level. So it will allow me to make sure that I get a perfectly straight, level hole drilled down through the bridge and the underlying abutment. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So it's going to be noisy. I will cut the volume down. So let's see how this is going to work. Okay, I can't see what I'm doing, so I'm going to have to move around. Okay, that's pilot hole number 1. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of them off camera. I've come outside now because it's a nice day for a change here in the mountains. We're running around 55 degrees, something like that right now. Beautiful time to work outside. So I've got my holes that I pre-drilled, and I've got the kit that came with the alignment dowels. And so I've got my 19 and 13 millimeters. So let's get the 19 out because we're going to drill the holes for the recesses for the heads and give that a shot. Again, fits right into my drill, and we'll go ahead and get in about 2 millimeters. Okay, well, let's see if that's going to fit flush. So that's going to have to go down a little bit deeper. I can feel it's still not flush. So just a tad more. And give it another test. Okay, that one's very close. That one needs just a hair more off. There we go. Okay, that one sits flush. That one sits pretty close to it. Let me... Okay, they're both sitting flush there. So let me flip it around and we'll do the other end. Okay, both of the other side are now done. Now the instructions from DCC Concepts say that I should flip this over and come in from the other side. However, because there's cork road bed over there already, I'm going to go ahead, take the chance, and drill through from this side and then cut out the cork on the other side. Okay, so I got it drilled and now it sits in and fits nice and flush just like we want. So when the two pieces mate, they're going to give us good alignment, good contact, and there's not going to be any issues as far as leveling goes. Now that I have the holes all drilled in the bridge for installing the PowerPoints, I need to go ahead and do the same thing right here on the bridge abutments on both sides of the doorway so I can install the other component of the PowerPoint. So you have to have the male and the female installed. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these, get them just the same as I did on the bridge. So I'll show you a little bit of that here, and then I'm going to turn the camera off, and we'll go ahead and do it off camera. Well, the drill made pretty fast work on this side through this little piece of plywood. So I've got both of these so that they are recessed and flush with the top of the board, or top of the plywood. So the next thing, I've got to come up from beneath with that 12mm bit. So as you can see here, I've got the males mounted here on this bridge abutment. So now I have to go ahead and do the other side. And as you can see, it's going to sit right there like that once these are installed on the bridge. And I decided to put the females on the bridge since that's going to be taken out and set down on shelves or something of that nature. And I don't want these points to be damaged. So with a nice flat surface like this, it can sit flush on any other surface without any chance of damaging the pins. Okay, so I've got the dowels or the PowerPoints temporarily installed in the bridge and the abutment. I haven't glued them in or anything. They're just held there by friction and a couple of pieces of paper. So let's give it a test fit. And there we go. It's a perfect fit. They're perfectly flush at both ends, exactly what I want. So the next step is to get those permanently installed. I'll probably just use a little bit of my liquid nails adhesive on them, just enough to hold them in place, since gravity is going to do the rest of it. And then after that, we got some wiring to do. Before I reinstall the rear railers here at the end of the bridge, I wanted to show you how I did the wiring. So down in the recess here, and you can see a little bit of the glint of the gold, are the tops of the contacts for the PowerPoints. So you can see I just connected pieces of the red and the green wire. That's about a 20 gauge solid wire. And then I cut paths through the cork so that I could run those wires underneath of the truck. And I'll be reinstalling the track and then soldering the ends of those wires there, once I take the insulation off, to the ends of the rails, to the outsides of those rails. So we have the red wires will go to the rails closest to the aisle. The green wires will go to the rails towards the wall. Well, as you can see here, I've got the bridge completed now. Everything is all wired, and I'll show you all of that in a minute, but I want to show you how it works, because I do have a locomotive set up here on the track ready to run across the bridge. So let's take a look at how it works. So the locomotive ran up to the bridge and out onto it without any issues whatsoever. So the wiring is working great. What I want to show you now is what happens when I lift the bridge out. So let me walk up there and we'll do a bridge lift and you can see. I'm going to turn the sound back on again. Okay, so you can see that the locomotive is within the section of track that will go dead when I lift the bridge out. So I'm going to leave the sound on so you can hear that. So you can see it goes dead immediately as soon as I lift the bridge. Put it back in place, and the sound comes back on. So that's going to stop trains from going over the edge and into the floor very quickly here when somebody does have to remove this bridge. And hopefully that'll prevent any accidents from occurring. Okay, I'm going to bring the camera in and we'll take a look at what I've done here for the final wiring. You can see here, all I have to do is lift the bridge out and it disconnects, and I've got perfect alignment as I had said previously. Now, let me set this down somewhere so it's not going to get dropped. If you look here, you can see I've got the PowerPoint males here installed. And as I said earlier, I put the females on the bottom of the bridge so that it will rest flush and flat on any flat surface I lay it on. And I'll have a shelf probably under here somewhere where I will put the bridge when it's not in use. But this means that these are protected. They're out of the way. They're not going to get dinged up. So those little gold points are not going to get worn. Now, one thing that I did not do, you see I've only got 2 contacts here. And those give me power to go to the front and the rear rails. But I needed a way to interrupt power going to the piece of track here that I wanted to stop trains when they're coming for the open bridge. So what I did was I used one of these micro switches right here. So this is one of them. I'll show you a little bit closer. And when you push down on this little arm, it either turns power on or off, depending on which way you hook it up. So what I did was I ran the green wire through this device, through the switch, connected it up so that it feeds back to the rails, as well as feeds to the PowerPoint. That's why there's 2 wires going here. So what that allows me to do is anytime that the bridge is installed and aligned using the alignments and powered using the PowerPoints, this little guy right here either turns power on or off to the bridge and also to the last 2 feet of track here on the layout. So that's what stops the train from proceeding when the bridge is taken out of service. So let's go ahead and put it back into place and get things running again. So that's all there is to it. You just drop it into place. There's no more slide bars. There's no more Anderson power pole connectors to be disconnected. It's a very easy thing to take apart. Now, any of you that are looking for more information on how I went about building the bridge or the abutments here that support it, as I said earlier, this appeared as a chapter in my book, Wiring Projects for Your Model Railroad. You can find this for sale on the Kalmbach Books website, or it used to be on Amazon.com as well. Probably still is there, so you can get that there. And it's published in 2018, so it's fairly current. I don't think there's been any major changes that have occurred other than these PowerPoints, which, to be honest with you, if I had known about these in 2017 when I took on this project, I would have done that from the start because this was such an easy project. I can't tell you how easy it was. And again, you can get these from DCC Concepts. Also check in the United States with Iron Planet Hobbies. He does carry a lot of the DCC Concepts product line. So that's it for today's video. That's it for this week's project. Have a great weekend and a great week. And I'll see you here next week with another video from the DCC Guide. Bye now.